Hey everyone, today we are talking about graphing equations in slope-intercept form. And so we want to explore graphing these on our graphing calculator. So I am going to open up my app here on my calculator. And you can use the app or you can use your calculator. I think it's definitely easier if you use your own calculator. And today we're going to explore a couple of things, what it means when we're graphing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to review how to put our calculator back into standard mode. So to do that into the defaults, we're going to do second, which is the blue button, plus, which is above enter. And what we want to do is we want to reset. So you can get to option 7 by either entering a 7 or scrolling down. Now we don't want to erase all RAM, we just want to change our defaults. So I'm going to use the arrow to go to defaults. And then do we want to reset? This is kind of like, do you really want to do this? And there we go. So I did that. So now to graph this equation, y equals 3x plus 1, on the top left is our y equals button. So we're going to hit that. And then we do 3. And the X button is right next to the green button that says alpha, X plus 1. And then to see what our graph looks like, we're going to go to the top right, and that's where there's the graph button. And we see this graph. So now when we see this graph, the question is, what are we looking at? So we have our X and Y axes here. But the question is, what do we see? So the idea to find out what your window is right next to the y equals button up top here. We have this window button. So if we hit window, that says X min is -10, X max is 10, and the scale is 1. So if we come over here to our graph again, I'm going to hit graph again. That means that on the x-axis, each one of these little marks is 1. And that if I go all the way over here to the left, it's -10. And all the way over here to the right, it's +10. If we go back to window, it tells me my y minimum is -10, y maximum is 10, and the scale is 1. Say I wanted to change that. I can just arrow down, and I can make my y minimum be -5. And then if I hit graph, oops, why didn't that change? I didn't change it. So that means I didn't actually hit enter. Oops, go to. What did I do? -5. Enter, enter, enter. There we go. Notice that it's kind of short and stubby down here. Well, that's because it's only going to -5 in the bottom and up to 10 in the positive. And again, each mark is that. Now, the other thing we can do is we can look at our table. So to see our table, we hit second graph, and that shows us our table. And if we scroll up and down, it changes the values. So we see here that when x is 0, 1 is our y-intercept. That's where it's crossing the y-axis. And then our table is going up by 3, and our x is going up by 1. So that's telling us, that's reminding us, that our slope is 3/1 for this function, and our y-intercept is 1. Because remember, our slope is change in y, or rise over run, and the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So I want you to pause and experiment with 2 and 3. So hopefully when you experimented, you realized that to change my equation, I just go back to y equals. I can hit clear. And then for my fraction, I do alpha y equals. And I can use my fraction button there, enter. And so it's 1 over 2, arrow over, x. And then this one is -5. So then I hit graph. And it's hard to tell exactly where that y-intercept is. So I can go back to window and I can change that to be back to -10. I can make my window whatever I want it to be. Okay, so hopefully you found that this has a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of -5, and this has a slope of -1 and a y-intercept of 3. Y equals mx plus b is our important equation because remember, m always stands for slope and b is always the y-intercept, which is where it crosses the y-axis. F crosses the y-axis. So now the question is, how can I write an equation of a line if I know the slope and the y-intercept? So I'm using y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to replace slope with 1/4, m with 1/4, and the y-intercept with 3. So that gives me y equals 1/4 x plus 3. I want you to pause and try the rest. So you paused and tried 2, 3, and 4. 2 is y equals 3/2 x minus 4. 3 is y equals 1.5x minus 1. And 4 is y equals -2.5x plus 3.5. So now for number 5, 6, and 7, we're asked to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So in order to do that, we need to know two things. We need to know the slope, and we need to know the y-intercept. So the y-intercept here on number 5 is just 2 because it's the y value when it crosses the y-axis. Our slope, we pick 2 points, and we do our rise over our run. So we went up 2 and over 5, so our slope is 2/5. So our equation is y equals 2/5 x plus 2. So I want you to pause and try 6 and 7. So hopefully you paused and did these. So 6, my slope is 3/2. My y-intercept is 3. So it's y equals 3/2 x plus 3. 7, my slope is -2/3. Y-intercept is -2. So it's y equals -2/3 x minus 2. Now we're going to graph each of these. So number 8, we can graph by knowing our slope equals -1/2 and our y-intercept is 2. So that means we start on 2, go down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, and then we connect, and that's our straight line. And you should always have arrows, and you should always write the equation on your line. Now number 9 is trickier because we don't have y equals. So we need to first solve that for y. So to solve that for y, we need to divide everything by 3. So that gives me y equals 2/3 x minus 2. So ideally, you know that your slope then is 2/3 and your y-intercept is -2. But you did have to buy an expensive graphing calculator. So what you could also do is on your calculator, oops, I didn't want to open that all the way like that. Okay, so if I don't flip it, it's like this. So learn something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to y equals. I'm going to clear out my equation. I'm going to type in my equation, alpha y equals, to get my fraction. I'm going to do 2 over 3. X is next to the green button, minus 2. And then I can see the graph. So I get an idea of what it looks like, but it's hard to graph from that. But what I can do is I can go to second table and get some points. And I can look for the nice points. I can scroll through. And I'm going more and more negative. I don't want to go that far negative. So I can see that at 0, it's -2, and at 3, it's 0. So 0 is -2, and at 3, it's 0. I plot those 2 points, I connect, and I write my original equation on the line. So pause and do number 10 and come back. Okay. So hopefully you paused and found out that that equation should be y equals -2x plus 2, which has a slope of -2/1 and a y-intercept of 2. So I start on 2 on the y-axis and I go down to right 1.